Welcome to Badaboom. I'm Troy. On this episode, we welcome Jason Aaron. Jason has wrote for various titles ranging from Punisher, Thor, Star Wars, TMNT, Absolute Superman, and more. On this episode, we dive into his latest creator-owned book, Bug Wars. Listen in as we talk about the newest small world in comics that was inspired by the bugs in Jason's backyard.
Hey Jason, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Doing good.
Good. We're both really excited to talk to you about Bug Wars because I recently read it. I'm glad to be able to talk to you after it's out because there's a lot of things that made me excited about what's to come with this series.
Cool.
But to start, I know like at the end you had a letter to the readers about where some of the inspirations came from, but what sort of really got the story started?
Yeah, I've talked about this being one of the more personable books I've ever done in a surprisingly strangely surprising way, I suppose, since it's a book about tiny bug-sized barbarians, but it does go back to the house I lived in when I was about 10 years old and the huge backyard we had there where I spent so much of my time playing with action figures and running around whacking the weeds with sticks and just making up stories in my mind. I think that's kind of where I fell in love with storytelling and where I really became a writer. And so many of the comics I was just getting into at that time, so much of the books I was reading are things that are continue to be important to me, things that have been important to me over the course of my career. And one of those comics that I first read was the Sword of the Atom, which was the Atom getting involved in like a kind of sword and sorcery sort of story where he finds this civilization of tiny aliens who ride frogs. And I loved that kind of story. I think that was the beginning of me kind of having this fascination about um, characters who could shrink down and go on adventures and find these hidden worlds, sort of right beneath our feet. And those kind of characters who live in the walls of your house, like the Littles or the Borrowers. And I have always been fascinated by that, always been attracted to those kind of stories. And I think for years I've been trying to figure out my own take on that. And then once Mahmud and I, we worked together on Conan and had a great time and wanted to do something that was ours. And I brought this idea up. Then he and I have been working together for years, really developing, fleshing out what this world looks like, the different kind of characters you'll meet there. So it's really feels like it's been a book that's about 40 years in the making. And part of me wonders like, why did I wait 20 years into my comic book career before I did something like this? Because I enjoy it so much. I mean, I've
Yeah.
written the first issue of Bug Wars. It's probably the most I've worked on a script since maybe the very first one I ever wrote, 20 or so years ago, which the other side number one was kind of the first full script I wrote. Bug Wars number one, we had the luxury of, like I said, we've been working on it for a while, and I wrote that script probably 2 years ago because we were spent a lot of time Mahmoud designing the different mites and just poured a lot into those opening battle scenes of the issue. So we had that luxury of time, so I could go back and tinker with that script, and I've changed names of characters and names of the sex of mites have changed so many times as I've just been working and reworking it and falling down rabbit holes, just trying to get, because the names are like an important part of that kind of
Yeah.
fantasy world building aspect. And none of that was frustrating to me, even though it felt like, well, this is the fourth time I've changed this name. Should I stop and let it go? It's like, no, as long as it's getting better, like it winds up in a good place. So I've enjoyed falling down those rabbit holes. So part of me is like, why didn't I do this right out of the gate 20 years ago? Because it's so fun. But the other part of me feels like I waited until the exact right time to do this. I think I needed to do the stuff I did on Thor. I needed to do Conan. I needed to do even stuff like Southern Bastards and Men of Wrath. I think I needed to do those books to kind of work my way to being able to do Bug Wars.
Yeah, and it helps having a partner like Mahmoud, you know. I think you sort of had to get to a place where you met someone like that that made the idea exciting. And as a reader, I think it's really cool to see someone like yourself be 20 years in the game and then find something like Bug Wars and be able to give readers something a little bit different. Like, I think for me as a reader, like lately, it's been really cool to read a lot of books from creators I love where it seems like they're swinging for the fences. They're taking a lot of things that they've learned from the big two or working on big IP stuff. And it's like, why don't we do something a little bit more freeing? Why don't we explore some of these ideas? So it was really cool to sort of see you and Mahmood like really let loose with that first issue. And even though there's a lot more to come with it, it felt like you guys weren't holding back at all.
Oh yeah, I mean, we wanted to show you kind of right out of the gate in that issue
Mm.
one, like this is what the stakes are. This is what kind of book it's going to be. You know, the huge battle scene that Mahmood and Matt completely nailed, sort of sets the tone and the scope. Even though these are tiny people, this is a book with a huge scope to it. And yeah, the grittiness, the violence of that. There's um, loads of splashes of bright green blood in those opening pages, and naked beetle barbarians cutting people's heads off and people being torn apart by ants. And so it was important to kind of set that tone with the might part of the equation before we even dig into the who the human characters are. And yeah, Mahmood was the perfect person to draw this. I mean, whenever you're doing creator owned books, the relationships are important because it is like you're starting a small business together. You know, it's not like you're working on Batman. It's not the same kind of equation. Like this is ours, so we have to make all these decisions together and figure everything out, which is the cool part of doing a creator-owned book. It's also can be the more challenging part. So Mahmood's one of the nicest guys, one of the best collaborators I've ever been able to work with, just from a personality standpoint. And on top of that, he's also one of the most incredible artists. So he was the perfect person to draw this. And yeah, I think what you're saying in terms of people taking big swings. I mean, I think that's always what I want to do with creator-owned stuff. I mean, even though I have been doing this for a while, I think it's important to always find that idea that gets you excited, that feels like, Bug Wars is a good example, I feel like, of something that I think everybody can read that book and they can see that what went into the soup, right? They can see the elements. Some people might see, Micronauts or Sectars or Sword of the Atom or Conan or whatever. Like you can see the kind of different ingredients, but I think at the same time, I've never seen a book quite like this. So that's my favorite kind of thing to work on and to read, where I'm reading it and feeling like, oh, why didn't I think of this? Like I've never seen these ingredients cooked together in quite this way. And that's to me the stuff, especially creator owned wise, that I love to work on. And I got to do Once Upon a Time at the End of the World just recently at Boom, which was another one where I felt like I don't think anybody's done a book quite like this. So um, yeah, that's the stuff I get most excited about.
Yeah, and what's
Yeah.
that kind of like? Uh, to me, this is almost like a new chapter or like a new era of like bugs in comic books or like bugs in media, but also like in that shrunk down world. Because I've talked to a couple of people about Bug Wars and they're like, what's it about? And I've explained, well, like it's Conan and the shrunk down with bugs. And for a lot of people, they're like, I don't remember the last time I picked something up that was in that universe of being so small, but in the real world, but also, with all those other elements you've described. And to some of the readers I've been talking to, this is a whole new chapter for what they've thought this could be for a comic book. So what's that kind of been like, seeing people's like reception to the book? And from people I've talked to, like this is a whole new chapter for the small world of things that people are getting pretty excited about it.
Good. Yeah. I mean, that's great. The response has been awesome. I mean, when you're so deep into something for so long, to me at least, I never know what anybody's going to make of it, right? And sometimes when you stare at something for so long, you start to think like, I can't tell if this is any good anymore or not. And I'd say, like I said, I'd been working on this script of going back and reworking it so many times. But when I got that first issue, when I got my comps a couple of weeks ago, and I held kind of the total package in my hand, I was flipped through it, and I was like, this is a good comic. I'm really proud of this whole package, how the whole thing came together. Just everybody, Mahmood, Matt, our colorist Matt Wilson, and our letterer and designer Becca Carey, who's amazing. Like everybody did great work on this, and we were all pulling in the same direction. Everybody was enthusiastic and excited, and everybody stepped up and like swung for the fences. And that's not always the case. Things don't always come together perfectly for whatever reason. This one I felt like, yeah, this is the best version of this that it could be. So I felt really proud. But you still have no idea what anybody else is going to make of it. And it's hard, right now to launch creator-owned books. I think retailers have, the last year was good for those things that were kind of familiar but new, like the Ultimate stuff and the Absolute stuff and Turtles, but still, when you're launching brand new original books, it's still hard to kind of fight through all the white noise and get retailers' attentions, get fans' attention. So it feels a bit more like a roll of the dice these days. You don't really know how it's going to go, but we were really pleased with the response we got from retailers kind of before FOC. I did try to do a lot of outreach of talking to tons of retailers and telling them what the book was and telling them about our long-term plans for it. And then, our numbers were good, and then it sold out. Before it went on sale, we were sold out at the distributor level, and I heard from a lot of stores that pretty quickly sold out of copies, which is on the one hand is good and exciting, and you like the kind of buzz that creates. On the other hand, I want everybody who wants a copy to be able to find one. And so we quickly did the second printing, and that'll be coming kind of next month, right before issue 2. But then I went to Third Eye Comics in Annapolis last weekend, which is one of the best, comic book stores anywhere in the country. One of the my favorite ones, and did a signing there. Which is best signing ever done there. There's a line of people going down the block, and it was cool. Third Eye is one of those stores does such a great job of hand selling books to customers. And so I feel like every person I was signing for had like an issue of Turtles, an issue of Superman, and an issue of Bug Wars. There was nobody coming up with just, oh, I just read Superman, or I just read Star Wars, or just read Thor, whatever. I felt like everybody had all of those, which was really great. And then, yeah, the response from people who've read the book and written in, we have a Gmail, that's in the back of the book. If you want to, we'll be doing a letters column with issue 3 going forward. So we've gotten tons of messages on that. Like it's been blowing up of people who've read the book and writing in to tell us their, favorite and least favorite insects. So yeah, the response has been great. Kind of blown me away.
Yeah, I've got to say the story is great, but I want to specifically shout out everyone on your artist coloring and lettering team, because when I first saw about this book on Instagram or in a newsletter, I was like, oh, this looks like a cool concept, and like I grew up playing with bugs in my backyard all the time, so like this definitely connects. But then when I picked up the book and I saw how much more detail I could see physically holding the book as opposed to like the image I saw in this newsletter, I was like, this is a beautiful book. It's got a lot more detail. It connects even more with me with the storyline than I thought it would. And when I went to my shop to pick it up, because I placed the FOC, they had like maybe like 10 books on the shelf. And I went back the next day and like, yeah, we sold those within 5 minutes of you picking up your book, because
Cool.
it just looks so good and is so engaging. So the artist, lettering, coloring team, and yourself, of course, with the story, definitely out of the park for everybody at my local comic book shop.
Cool, that's good to hear. Yeah, it's a very pretty book. Mahmud and Matt were the same team from Conan the Barbarian and King Conan, so they have worked together quite a few times now, and I think are a great fit. I think we drove Matt a little crazy trying to figure out the color of the blood in the book because we first thought, well, it shouldn't be red, right? It should be a different color, but then you worry, does it lose its impact if it's not red? So we went with, I think we started with green and then we went to red and then we went back to green. I thought the green just looked better, like the red just started to become overkill at some point, but when it's green, you can go crazy with it. So I love like how much bright green splashes of blood we get in that first issue. And then Becca Carey is somebody I had not worked with her before this book, and kind of right away I felt spoiled by her because she's so good and so thoughtful, just in terms of how she places balloons, where she pops them kind of behind the art sometimes, and where she blows like the lettering out of the balloon. She's just really, really good. And then her sense of design is great too. You see, kind of, she did that um, ad that's in the middle of the book for the bug spray, and um, she designs the layout for all the back matter pages and all that kind of stuff. And so Becca, like once we started doing Absolute Superman, I asked if we could get her on that, and so she does. She does Absolute Superman and Absolute Wonder Woman. So I think a lot of people are now aware of how amazing Becca is, and I'm really happy to have her on board with this because we'll be doing every issue of the book will have back matter pages like you see in issue one, where there's kind of pages from the journals of Professor Slaymaker, Slade's dead father. These are kind of his journals where he's going around describing the culture of, in issue one, it's the ant imperium, and then also talks about some of the different species of ants that you'll find in the yard. So issue two is the same thing, but for the beetle riders and beetles. And then, issue three, I think it'll be the spider witches, and four, the wasp raiders. So every issue will have back matter. So I think we're giving you a pretty full package. There's not a lot of empty pages just to throw an ad on, in the back of this book.
And all I ask is just for you guys to start selling that ad of this the bug spray. You spray, I pray. I think you guys will do pretty well with that. We sell
Yeah, we
t-shirts
should.
of that.
Yeah, maybe if we do a third printing, we'll throw that as a cover or something.
Yeah, as a variant and stuff. But that's really cool. And I think for me, like, I grew up sort of loving like Toy Soldiers and Honey, I Shrunk the Kid. So to be able to see like you guys really dive into this world and really flesh it out, because I think a lot of times it could be easy to get disenchanted with what's kind of like in the mainstream a little bit, because it is so sanitized these days in a lot of ways, and some things, and you get it because people want to protect their jobs, so sometimes it's hard to take a chance on something like this, but it's cool to see, you sort of be at this point in your career where, in between writing a Turtles book and a Superman book, you're doing something really, creator owned driven. Mahmood, who's done huge books, to be able to sort of give readers something like this. And I think that's kind of where the industry is. I think like it's like, all right, like this is a cool concept, but also Jason Aaron is amazing. And I'm reading Superman right now and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so I'm sure this is going to be good. So I think it's cool to see what creators have been doing lately, like being able to do that stuff at the big two, whether it be some of the exciting stuff like the Ultimates and the Absolute, but still be able to dip their toes and have their own ideas and really, again, swing for the fences.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of always been what I've been aiming for since my career started. Uh, um, I broke in a couple of times really that I won this Marvel Comics Talent Search contest, but really I broke in, and what got me more work was the stuff I did at Vertigo. And I did Scalped for a long time, and then I started doing image books, and then did Once Upon a Time at Boom, and So that's always been important to me to do creator-owned stuff, just from a, being able to flex kind of different creative muscles to also just the business idea of like wanting to do stuff that I own. Um, but I enjoy everything I get to do. Nobody ever puts a gun to my head and makes me write, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Thor or anything else. I can say everything I've done has been stuff that I was excited to do. Um, and as I came out from under my Marvel exclusive and didn't want to renew that. I knew that opened the door for me to work for DC for the first time, and then other opportunities to come with that, including Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But alongside that, it was important to me to continue to work on creator-owned books. So I knew I wanted to get back to Image and do some more stuff. And I've actually got another creator-owned thing that we're working on too. Um, so that, I mean, pretty much as long as I'm above ground and still working on stuff, like that'll be the plan. As long as I'm enjoying doing work for hire books, and Superman in particular is something I plan on staying on for a long, long time. So as long as I'm having fun and feel like I have something to offer and a story to tell, I will keep doing that stuff. But I want to keep doing the creator-owned stuff too. And it's nice now too even though this is me kind of coming back to Image for the first time in a while, I loved getting to do a book at Boom. So I kind of also like sort of, not having all my eggs in one basket now. I think there was a point last year where I was working for 6 different companies at the same time, sort of one stage of a project or another, which was a lot. And that won't always be the case, but it's just nice to sort of spread your wings a bit more.
Yeah, and I
And
think from like a reader's perspective, like every time they pick up a book, either from Marvel or DC or Boom or Bug Wars or anything, they can kind of expect like things that they maybe recognize as you, but it also is like a different side or like a different flavor of you that they get to explore from all those different books. And so they know they're gonna like it, but it's still always gonna feel fresh between all these different titles that you currently are writing or that you've written. Because from Superman to Bug Wars, it's definitely you, but it feels different and it's refreshing switching between those books.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think that's one of the things I've tried to do over the course of my career, or I've sort of been proud of, that I've been able to mix things up quite a bit. I think like the stuff I did on Punisher is very different from what I did on Wolverine and the X-Men. You know, I wrote Punisher and then turned around and wrote Uncle Scrooge kind of in a short amount of time. And um so yeah, I that kind of thing, being able to mix it up and do very different kinds of projects and do projects that hopefully don't all sound the same, don't have the same voice. That keeps me excited and invested, and hopefully fans as well. And it's doesn't mean you have to read and enjoy every single one of those. Um, if you like Turtles, but the don't like Bug Wars or whatever, like it, I don't feel like every fan has to read everything I do. If you do, like if you're somebody who comes up and you've got Wolverine and the X-Men and Southern Bastards in the same stack, makes me very happy. But that's it's really just doing stuff that I'm invested in and excited about, and just at the end of the day, I find if that's true, if I really am that invested in it, that'll translate. Other people will be as well. Is it a huge number of people? Is it a small number of people? Is it the same number of people who read everything else I do? Who knows? But I think the to me, like the secret to doing this job successfully, and whatever way you want to weigh that success, is just at the end of the day doing stuff that I want to read, books that I want to see exist. And Bug Wars is a prime example of that. Like I wanted this book to exist for 40 years. So eventually I was like, I guess I should make it myself.
and right now it's slated for 6 issues, I believe. Will we be able to see more of Bug World Wars? Because just from the first issue, I could see how big this world is, and I'm excited to see it explored more in the following issues. But I definitely want more than six.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, the plan has always been this is like book one of what we want to be a big saga that, yeah, explores this world. There will be different parts of that. Um, that yeah, this is one 6 issue story, which introduces the Slaymaker family, introduces the world of the yard and the characters that live there. And you do get a sense of resolution at the end of this story, but it also just kind of just begins to explore the different corners of the yard and sort of there's still some of the parts of it we don't go to, some of the sects of mites that we don't see. There's still some sort of looming threat that's only just kind of teased. Um, so coming out after that, what we'd like to do is other volumes, other books that explore that same sort of story, the history of the Slaymaker family, their past and present day in the yard. But also I want to do stories that explore the world of the yard beyond that. So some of the characters that we meet in this first arc, like Wista the Spider Witch and Swarm Lord Krim from of the Beetle Writers. Like I also want to explore some of the stories set, just within the yard. So I think we'll have the opportunity to do both of those. It's just a matter of how we stagger and structure it. So this will be more like a series of minis and one shots than it will be, one sequentially numbered ongoing series.
Either way, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of lore involved in the Bug Wars, and that's the kind of stuff that me and definitely Chris like nerd out on those details. So whatever's gonna be coming next in the 6 issues and those miniseries coming afterwards, I know we're definitely going to be looking forward to it. You can get Bug Wars if your comic book shop still has it. I think they're going on to a second printing pretty soon. So definitely contact your local comic book shop, place an order for that. Make sure that you get your copy because the art is great, the story is great. If you ever played outside as a kid, I think you're really going to connect with this book. And Aaron and Jason, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciated all the insight you've given us to the stories and what war we can look forward to. And with that, bada boom.
Bada boom.
Bada boom.
Thank you for listening to the Badaboom podcast. Keep the conversation going on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Get in the comments on our YouTube channel and let us know what you'd like to hear next. And please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen.